sound and when it goes into the beat, but I've learned by being in the business and being around the record buying people, they like things that's like different in sounds.
Alrighty, hello everybody, and welcome back to the Mania Squid Game, just in time for a third round. We drew the teams last weekend, or we drew the captains of the teams last weekend, and all you guys were spending the week toiling away trying to form the perfect team to try and survive to the fourth round. But now we need to give you guys the map pool and your opponents for the round. As always, my name is Sparky, and I am joined in the commentary booth this time around by none other than Alexire. Alexire, how you doing?
Hello, I'm doing fine. Excited to see how these teams go, because what's it called? They will be randomly selected with who goes up against who, so hopefully we have some interesting, 4v4s.
Yeah,
Or was
for
it
sure.
3v3? I forgot. I don't remember, but
As teams of four, the matches themselves are going to be 3v3s.
that's right.
There were some adjustments made at the last second. Well, not at the last second. That was originally the plan, but some modifications. So if you have any questions as to how the format's going to work, I think that was clarified in the round info and the announcements, and it'll be clarified once again once the showcase is over. But without further ado, let's not keep the players waiting any longer than they need to. Let's go ahead and show them the first map of this map pool.
Let us.
And the first one's going to be Ayu no Uta, Valadic map.
Our stream pick, if I can recall correctly.
That sounds about right. For those of you wondering, this is going to go back to a more traditional best of 7 format. So first team to 4 points. Actually, you have to win 4 maps in a row, breaking away from tradition, to win the tug of war against your opponents. So not necessarily first team to 4 points is going to win, but you got to win the 4 in a row. If you don't manage to win the 4 in a row and we run out of maps, then we go to tiebreaker. But getting right on into this, some very technical, I would say more dump stream oriented. The snaps are varying quite frequently throughout the first quarter of this chart, clocking at about 3.5 minutes. So not the longest map in the world, but definitely one that can.
Quite long for just a general pick, but yeah, it's definitely not as long compared to some other stuff we've seen.
Yeah, for sure. 140 BPM with a lot of like 1.8 streams thrown in there, a lot of jumps as well to kind of keep you on your toes. It's really, I feel like the outer column ones, like the 1, 2, 3, 4s, won't be the worst. It's the inner column ones when you're trying to juggle everything around it that can start to get a little cumbersome. But honestly, for some of the maybe higher skill ceiling players, this should be relatively comfortable. It's just a matter of finding the right combination of people to tackle this one.
Yeah, we've got a very long jack right there. But this is the calmer section, but as you can see by that, it's still not exactly too easy. But
yeah,
we do go back in, it starts picking up once again.
Yeah, I feel like these more sustained streams are going to be where we start to see some players start to drop off, maybe a couple of misses here and there, some drops in accuracy, because there aren't very many breaks once it starts to take off. So kind of take the opportunities when the density starts to lighten up to try and gather yourself, recompose yourself before tackling the next section. And they telegraph the transitions pretty nicely before you dive back on into it. We're already into the last quarter of the chart, and it's basically more of the same. If you can handle the front 3 quarters, this back quarter isn't going to be all too bad.
No, but this can be quite a stamina draining chart, as expected of a lot of speed picks.
Yeah.
We do go into this guitar solo sort of thing where it's a bit more on the variable snap side of things compared to what we've seen earlier, but I do think it has been quite all over the place throughout.
Yeah, I would liken this to like a little bit more dense speed 'em. Watch those quad jacks at the end. Definitely don't want to drop right at the end there. And that'll do it for our first rice pick in this pool.
And then we go on to our jump stream pick, which you might recognize this as it's a fairly popular loved map by Electon.
Yeah, it's gonna be Pencil's Little Girl Goodbye .ra. Like you were mentioning, a very well-known love chart on 1.2x rate. So keep that in mind when you are going to practice this. If you are going to practice it, of course, with it being loved, I imagine a lot of players are already pretty familiar with this chart. So
yeah, there is quite a good amount of like very eggy, jackish sort of sections, as we can see here. But the main skill set in this is definitely jump stream.
yeah, we're pushing the envelope a little bit to 240 BPM this time around. And I feel like when it comes to like Electon and Valadic maps, they're just really designed to kind of put you off, make you uncomfortable at different portions of the chart. Thankfully, this one not too long, 2.5 minutes compared to the 3.5 that we saw from earlier. So don't have to keep up that pace for too long, but definitely something to consider when starting to strategize.
We are going into another pretty eggy section. I believe we were just in one of the main jump stream sections, and we are going into another. Jump stream really does pick up right here.
Yeah, a lot of two-hand trills transitioning into basically 3-column jumps all across the board. Pretty comfortable watching the transitions in between. Of course, it's going to be the main order of business in between the phrases, and then you do pick up a tiny bit of a break, go back into some light chord jacks. Not really all jacks, but just a lot of chords to kind of chew through as you make your way into the last quarter of the chart.
Yeah. We are going back into the denser section. As
Yes.
we are into the second harder jump stream part of the map.
Yeah, you start to throw in some hands in there as well, trying to keep those balanced. You got a lot of really implied mini jacks in the inner columns that can throw you off if you're not too careful. A lot of really quick bursts as well, transitioning in between. And that'll do it for Rice 2. I imagine this is going to be the more popular pick of the first two, but I mean, it just depends on the overall team composition.
Yeah, and then we are going into our miscellaneous Peck, Rice, whatever picks. Starting. Oh no, this is not. We are going into our chord jack pick. I forgot.
Oh yeah, I think that'll satisfy the one person that has been clamoring in the Discord for for a chord jack pick.
Well, here you go.
And of course, you can't have chord jacks without mentioning Monheim. So
yeah, also known or went by Civilization back then, hence the name.
Yeah, very prominent chord jack mapper and player. I think this one clocking it at 135 BPM. So
yeah, there's a lot of bursts in here as well. But we are starting off with some just mini jacks, followed by these fairly light bursts.
Yeah, a lot of really interesting rolls in between these chord jack sections. I think that's going to be the real pain point for a lot of the more traditional chord jack players, because you're trying to break them out of their flow. And if you're able to successfully do that, then that's really where those like 200s and 100s can come from if you're trying to maintain this consistent tempo for an extended period of time.
Yes. We do get a much bigger density pickup here as we progress further into the song.
Yeah, basically staying with the trend of a lot of 2-note, 3-note chords. Not really seeing a lot of like quad jacks coming out, which is pretty nice. I know once you start getting the 4-column jacks that the coordination starts to go out the window a little bit, but I'm willing to harken a guess that this is probably going to be the most played map just by the nature of the composition of the players that are remaining. This is probably a pretty comfortable tempo for a lot of the players to at least feel confident enough to swing if they feel they don't have any other Rice picks to jump into.
Yeah, for sure. But now that actually does do with our classified patterns. So we are just going into the tech miscellaneous picks. And we are starting with a shoegazer map. Toki. Is that how you pronounce it? I don't actually know.
I'd be willing to put money on it being Toki.
Yeah. Starts off fairly calm, but that's as expected of many songs in general.
Yeah, it kind of has like a bit of a 2L vibe to it at this beginning. Just a lot of really accentuated punches of notes to kind of get you started here before you dive into the more technical sections. The snap starts to get a lot more buried, a lot more flam-oriented grace notes
We do
get thrown in.
Jacks.
Thankfully, this one very short,
Yeah.
full minute shorter than the last two picks that we have seen, but that just means that the margin for error is a lot smaller compared to those other picks. So definitely tread with caution if you feel inconsistent, because this is definitely not one that you want to feel shaky on.
It's much harder than some of the stuff we've seen already. So its length does make up for its sheer difficulty.
And just the overall layering is a lot more complex than stuff we have seen from the other tech pick, kind of like in the special round. The one map by Alice, this one kind of cranks it up a notch. And yeah, that'll do it for this rice pick. We can go ahead and jump on into our next one.
Yeah. We have Crystal Chamber Combustion by April and Tim, otherwise known as Valedict and Shoegazer, you might know.
Yeah, a bit of a collaboration between them, hosted on a set by Guden.
Yeah, but we go straight into it this time. There's no easy start.
Yeah, no rest for the weary on this pick. He jumped right on into it. A lot of more jump stream oriented tech, and it just kind of goes full bore. One of the highest BPM charts that we have in the rice pool.
Very short, along with Toki, which is just a minute 32. I believe, was the other one a minute 33?
Yeah, basically within a second of each other. So kind of pick your poison on these first two of the more miscellaneous rice picks.
Indeed. You go into this very hard, and you know, it's pretty straightforward to describe. Just this jump streamy tech.
Yeah, I feel like some teams might want to gravitate towards this one compared to Toki, just because it does have some like foundational structure with the jump streams that you can kind of rest on. But overall, the frenetic pacing of it is gonna determine what is gonna be a good score versus a great score. And just like that, we are done with that rice pick.
Indeed, on to the next.
And this is going to be Rogue Myth by Voiceall, and I believe you made this one.
I did. This one also goes straight into it, and this is much more bursty. As if you listen to the song itself, it's pretty apparent as it does take on the nature of those Terminal 11 kind of songs, except there's more room for doing what you want rather than just like following strictly the percussion, as there's a lot of weird sounds that go throughout and they're charted alongside. It's operated to 1.05, so it's harder than, well, that's actually too straightforward, what am I saying? But it's very hard, to say the least. But we do go into this pretty large break section, as it's more or less split into two parts, I'd say. It's also very short. Despite it saying 3 minutes, the intro is 42 seconds long. I was too lazy to cut the intro. I apologize.
Okay, so gonna have the wonderful skip button at the beginning.
Yes.
So about 2 minutes 15. I look forward to people saying that it's 3 minutes and being like, damn, that was a really fast 3 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah, like you were saying, it's like we got through that first half and here comes that back half that you were talking about, and I mean it just
This
goes right back up.
Pretty backloaded. I believe this is a lot harder than the first half.
So first half was a bit of a primer, kind of get you settled in, and then once you feel like you're comfortable, you kind of get sucker punched in the back half.
We are into this last section, which is just another break into the outro, because this song is 5 minutes long actually, and I just had to cut it at 3 minutes because the rest is ambience.
Oh, lovely.
It's Very nice ambience, I must say, though. But this is the outro. It's pretty light, and it's exactly 2,000 notes, which I think is funny, but that's it for this pick.
Very nice. And I think that does it for
That is all
the
our
rice pool.
rights. We're onto the hybrids now.
And the first one's going to be a pretty popular song, has a lot of different takes on it in terms of charting. It's going to be Saihate here, but it's going to be a T-Dex version of it. And it's going to, I believe, be our first hybrid of pool.
Yeah, this is also Love, so I believe this is pretty well recognized. This one's pretty even when it comes to the rice and long note balance, as it does kind of constantly switch between the two.
Yeah, I think it's pretty well telegraphed by the music when you're going to be going into an LN section versus when it's going to be a full dedicated rice section. A lot of it's just kind of structured off of that piano in the background.
Yeah. This piano solo being represented by rice due to its speed, which makes sense. But we do go into the next section, which I believe is a lot more long note heavy.
Yeah, you get into this guitar solo. A lot of very short inverse patterning, a lot of reverse shields kind of getting thrown at you left and right. Not the worst thing to deal with. I think it's going to be really the speed of it happening that's going to put off a lot of players, but
yeah. Long notes still are just kind of including themselves within this rice, but you get these chord jacks right here. And then you go into this slow inverse chorus, I guess. It's not really chorus, but that's the best way I can describe it.
Yeah, and he transitioned out of it back into a right section before diving into the LNs for a brief moment. And yeah, I feel like this is basically like a quote-unquote like traditional hybrid structure. You have your delineated LNs, delineated rice, and then it starts blending together as things start to pick up, and then you start to separate them again with more frequency. But that'll do it for our first hybrid here. And we can go ahead and move on to our second one here. It's going to be a pretty popular map as well, featured in Soft 5. I believe it's going to be Emeraldus on 1.2x. The very funny Chaos Control difficulty.
Good difficulty name. Okay. We are going to go straight into it.
Yeah, I think some of the older players, the ones that were around, well, I don't want to say older, but the ones that were around in like 2020, 2021 will be familiar with this chart, or at least have heard of it. I mean, Stupid Man, a pretty prominent mapper in the community, so would not be surprised if a lot of people were familiar with this chart.
I don't remember the rate it was used on in Soft 5, but I believe this is above the rate it was used in.
Yeah, I'd be willing to say this is a higher rate than that, but it just goes to show the level to which the players have developed since this was featured back then. But
there are a good amount of mini jacks that are combined with these long notes, so you've got to watch your coordination.
They get into those like 3-column inverse LN sections. These really do come out in bursts. You get the reverse shield into the anchored mini jacks.
Despite the price, I believe the long notes do carry the difficulty of this a bit.
Yeah, for sure.
Another very short pick. And we will go into our last hybrid.
And it's going to be destroy, destroy, destroy the happy end. Mint cut diff on 1.2x. I believe this was featured in MWC, the cut version at least.
I don't actually remember.
I believe it was MWC either 2021 or 2020. I could be wrong on the year, but regardless, I believe this is also on a higher rate than was used back then.
You've got some long packs. That's what's it called? Something to watch out for. But we do go into this next section that has a significant amount of long notes that do add to the difficulty. Once again, kind of intertwining themselves with the rice.
Yeah, just overall very reverse shield heavy. And I mean, if you're familiar with the rank chart of this, I mean, it is just a cut version with a couple of tweaks to it, I believe. It's very technical in what it asks you to do, but overall, I think the structure of it's very fair and navigatable for those teams that maybe want to kind of toe the line between dedicating to full LN but not wanting to play into a full Rice team's hands. I think this is the best option for a lot of teams based on its familiarity alone.
Yeah, from the looks of it, just by a outsider standpoint, you do see there's a significant more amount of rice notes rather than long notes. But the way they're scattered throughout this map make it so that the long notes are kind of this unavoidable thing you have to like remember are there, or else you'll just end up tripping up.
Yeah, for sure. And then you have sections like this where you get these really long jump trills. The earlier section where you had those very abrasive outer column anchors where you're having to do syncopated rhythms on the other three columns and then transitioning from the left hand to the right hand. It's stuff like that that really makes this chart very hard to play through sometimes. But if you can nail it consistently, this might be a pretty decent pocket pick to have going into next weekend. But that'll do it for the last hybrid. Now we've got a couple of LNs to go into before the all-important tiebreaker.
Yes. Let's get into our coordination. Now, another map a lot of you might recognize, which is also loved, which is Dance Number by One Crystal.
Yeah, very notorious map, dare I say infamous. And I feel like most of Juan's timing hell maps are bordering on that line of like infamous for the relative difficulty. But I feel like nowadays stuff like this is a lot more approachable by the overall player base. That being said, if you have some LN specialists on your team and enough people that are fine with playing stuff like this, this is probably going to be a popular pick to try and nab a point or break a streak of a more Rice dominant team.
With all the short picks we've been seeing, this does make up for that quite a bit, clocking in at 4 minutes 20 seconds. Especially for the type of map it is with this just long note coordination, whatever you call it. It's going to be a very hard challenge to keep your accuracy up, your combo up, anything like that.
Yeah, I feel like some teams are just going to be trying to combo game their way through this chart because unlike traditional like LN density charts where you can kind of get away with playing it like jump stream or like hand stream in certain instances, stuff like this where the releases aren't traditionally on like a 1/4 or a 1/8, they're very much varying in structure. You really have to pay attention to the release element lest you give up a ton of accuracy. The one real saving grace about this chart, despite it being so long, is the fact that it is on OD 6.5, so you do have a little bit more lenience compared to it being maybe like a 7.5 or a 7. So it'll be very interesting to see which teams want to try and pick something like this in their matches.
Yeah. Considering the amount of people that are much better at Rice and they're at long notes, the people who do have just the slightest advantage of being able to play long notes will probably take this one out because they can definitely gain that lead as the sheer length alone can cause for the other team to slip up many, many times.
Yeah, for sure. And speaking to picking it, I would feel like this one might be a pretty popular target for bans if it's left unprotected during the weekend. So it's gonna be interesting to track that stat once this round of matches are done. But moving our way into the last third of the chart, we start to get into more full-on inverse sections. The streams start to break up some of the monotony in between, and you get a tiny bit of a break, a lot of rice to kind of satiate the appetites, but you still got to keep your fingers glued to the keyboard basically to try and nail down some of these patterns.
Yeah, chart itself does pick up in these denser vocal sections, you know, hard to watch out for. We do go back into the chorus.
Yeah, it's just the fact that there's so many like implicit mini jacks in those LN structures that basically beating down the same key repeatedly, especially on the outer columns, can prove to be a bit of a task to manage, especially since you have been going for the better part of 4 minutes at this point. The mental fatigue along with the physical one that might come with it is going to be something to manage if you are going to try and tackle this chart.
Yeah, I mean, keeping accuracy this good, 99.64 for the replay, is just insane for something just long notes this varied all over the place.
For sure. Would not be surprised to see a lot of like 98s, 97s just trying to make it through to the end. But that'll do it for
Ordination.
our first, the LN chart. And then we're going to get into our second one here.
This is LN Density.
Yeah, it's going to be Lemon Guy's version of Lancelot. Song that's picked up in popularity quite recently. A lot of different takes on this. I think, who was it? Somebody had a version, I think Ballistic had a version in NAMT this year.
Yes, that would be correct.
So definitely a notable song, and just given the fact that this is a pretty old Lemon Guy LN chart, I think more people will probably be familiar with this one versus that one. And we get into more traditional density, like I was mentioning during Dance Number. You can kind of get away with reading this like a rice chart at the expense of some of your accuracy. Should be a little bit more navigatable for some of the more rice-oriented teams if they are forced to go into something like this, especially because you only have that one band to work with.
Yeah. Since he does pick up these few jacks here and there. I believe we did see that earlier in the chart as well.
Yeah, pretty common theme throughout this chart. Watch out for the inner column trill transitioning out of that first half into the back half.
For the calmer section of the song, there's much more shields here, which can just cause more issues on your coordination, especially with the density alone.
Yeah, you're basically getting into very fast full inverse for an incredibly extended period of time before you finally transition out of it and getting into those little impact jacks before diving into this last little stanza before the outro. Things start to pick up. It feels like it's going faster. The tempo doesn't change at all, but the fact that the snapping starts to go from those like 1/4 into like the 1/6, 1/8 really makes it feel faster than it is. And just like that, it's over.
And then we have our final long note pick, which is just our wildcard miscellaneous long note, which is another Lemon Guy chart.
Yeah, it's gonna be Turkey.
Yes. Another quiet intro. But we do go straight into it with some of those rice bursts right there, but the long notes can make that hard to manage.
Yeah, and then you have these really quick trills that kind of get interspersed throughout some of these LN sections. A lot of those really fast 3-column bursts as well, trying to coordinate through that.
Yeah, the one-hand trills are definitely something to watch out for. You gotta make sure you remember those. But we do go into this more of a coordination density section right here.
Yeah, it definitely has a bit of both worlds in some degrees to the earlier density and coordination chart. You're kind of going in between both, and as you transition into this back half, watch that transition where you have this long 1-column anchor and then the streams around it. Very easy to lose track of where you're going, which note's supposed to be held the longest, and you start inadvertently releasing too soon.
Yeah. This just keeps us up with this pretty bursty kind of long note rice. It's hard for me to describe it.
Yeah, it's just
Yeah.
it's basically just a kitchen sink at this point. All the elements that we were talking about earlier kind of start to culminate together and really becomes a bit of a test at the end of the day for those that have the like rock solid fundamentals. Shaking stuff out like this and transitioning in between those different elements should be fine, but if you're leaning towards one end or the other of the LN spectrum, that's going to be a little bit interesting to see when you have to kind of mash those two together to make your way through this. But that will do it for the actual map pool for round 3 here. All that's left is to show the players. If you are unable to win 4 maps in a row to win the tug of war, you'll be going into our wonderful, wonderful tiebreaker. And the tiebreaker. Oh boy.
Yes. 3rd lemon map in a row. Absinthian Drive.
Yeah, this is a bit of a doozy of a chart. I think the hardest map we have seen, basically taking Party Starter and cranking it up to 11. Funnily enough, also a Lemon Guide chart for that round's tiebreaker, but I digress.
I forgot which soft tournament.
I believe it was soft 5 as well.
Yeah, and it was used on 1.1, if I'm not mistaken.
I believe so. This was either grand finals or finals, and this is a nightmare of a chart to deal with. These very long, extended LN density, basically full inverse, trying to watch those releases. If you lose track of any time during that section, basically kiss your combo, kiss your accuracy goodbye. And it continues on here, not giving you any semblance of a break. And we're still only in the first 1/8 of the chart here. This map clocks in at just under 6 minutes.
Yeah. Very long. So there's a lot to take in with what this chart's going to offer. As it's just got anything you can think of, really, as it's absurdly difficult. Alright, 4 jacks right here. And then we're straight back into just streams.
Yeah, funnily enough, this might actually be the section where a lot of teams start to gain in terms of accuracy. You start to get back into some more rudimentary structures, not having to coordinate all those nasty LNs, but the speed element of this section is really what's going to put off some players and some teams. You start to get the reappearance of some of these LNs. Not the most intrusive during this section, but trying to keep those in mind as you try and juggle everything else that's going on. These very poor grace note jacks also start to make their appearance, but then you get a tiny bit of a break for as much of a break as this song can give you.
Yeah, right back into it with these long note anchors, kind of.
If you thought it was bad on one hand, try doing it across 2 different hands for an extended period of time. You finally dive on out of that into something a little bit more relaxing. Call it mini break number 2.
There's quite a few of these mini breaks throughout.
But along with those mini breaks, you get some really intrusive elements. You get those inner column anchors that kind of wear away at your stamina just a little bit more, having to juggle that before you get back into basically a faster reprise of that earlier inverse section. A little bit less harsh in terms of the snappings overall, but still very hard to juggle before you dive back into a bit of a broken speed section with a little bit of jumps thrown in there, just keep you on your toes. And finally, we're into the back half.
We are halfway through now, yeah. You thought this was hard enough. More long notes just inserting themselves.
Yeah, basically a LN density section. You can kind of get away with playing those light rights for the beginning section, but then the releases start to get elongated a little bit, and trying to fudge your way through it becomes impossible.
Yeah.
A lot of grace notes, but like you were saying, a bit of a break before you get into
Before you
that
get right
3-column trill. Jesus.
Yeah.
And again, just these rapid 3-column staircase patterns, trying to alternate through, maintaining combo through that, basically maintaining the finger speed through that. It's very easy to get it off on the wrong foot and basically break that entire section. CB rushes are going to be very important to avoid, especially when you get into those grace note flams at the end of the section. I can imagine a lot of players breaking there, especially as the stamina starts to wear out.
Yeah. This is another one of those easy sections, but that's not to say this will last for very long. It is picking up here.
Yeah, becoming a little bit more of a jump stream section. These LNs start to intrude just a little bit here. Not the hardest things in the world, but again, that motif of these anchors really making themselves apparent, just inserting themselves at the most inopportune times. You're starting to build up a bit of a groove, and then they make their reappearance in the outer columns, and it really starts to throw you off your game once again before the LNs start to come right back in. A little bit easier, a little bit gentler compared to what we have been seeing, but still, you've been going for the better part of 4 minutes at this point. Can imagine there's going to be some fatigue starting to wear in. The accuracy is going to start taking a little bit of a dip if they aren't already in the dumpster here.
Yeah, you got these frills here as well, some on one hand.
Before this quick inverse section, and then those 3-column stairs appear once again, but with the holds on that 4th column, basically demanding that you pay it the respect it deserves before you get into this even faster speed section. The outer column trill on the one hand, maintaining it for a prolonged period of time before switching it to the other hand. If you thought mirror was going to save you, it's not on a chart like this.
As we do go into the outro here, or final section of the chart, you will notice in a few seconds that the first column right now
It's just
does not let up. There's
one final anchor.
Long anchor. Yeah.
And then you get into the 1-4 long note jack at the end, as if though there wasn't enough middle fingers being thrown at you throughout this chart. This entire map is just a nightmare to play through unscathed. So if you're not able to get that 4 in a row, prepare yourselves. This is definitely a tiebreaker you don't want to sight read.
Yeah. Especially hard to think about, considering that this was on 1.1 back when it was used in soft.
Yeah, and I think it was Miuka versus Boji, if I recall correctly. And Miuka just destroyed the chart. It wasn't a showcase at that point, but I mean, there's very few players that can challenge a chart like that at a high level. But it'll be interesting to see everybody else try. But
Yeah.
with that being said, that will do it for the Mappool showcase, and all that is left is to reveal what those matchups are going to be for next weekend. You guys spent the week building your teams and making sure everything was in order. Now we have the 12 teams, and they're going to be drawn randomly. The way we're going to do this is we're going to do the red side and then the blue side for the matchups. So the first 2 teams you see are going to be your match, and we'll continue on from there. We'll reiterate as we go, but there are going to be 6 matches overall, and they're going to take place next weekend. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started.
Yes, let's roll the wheel to see who our first team matchup will be. We have the Gigglers, which is featuring Beta Carotene or Carrots as the team captain.
And then their opponent is going to be this next wheel spin, and it's going to be Galactic's Riots. And that is captained by Legendi Was Taken. So that is our first official matchup for round 3.
Yeah, now let's go on to our second team matchup here.
So on the red team, it is going to be American Eagles.
Our team captain for that is LS Dev.
Ready, so a very strong team overall, and their opponents are going to be Pokemons are furries, and yes, they are, and that is captained by Razuna.
And that is our second team matchup, so we'll be seeing our third now. Our first team will be the Leftovers.
And that is captained by Bagietka. And their opponents are going to be very close, but it's going to be Eliminate Said No. And that is captained by Envy.
Now we're going on to our fourth matchup.
And that is going to be Ant IDM, and that is captained by Captain Sivelia. So that'll be our fourth matchup, and their opponent is going to be
Around the World. That captain is LS Jaden.
Very nice. So 4 teams left, 2 matches left to decide.
Yep.
It's going to be Eliminate Said Yes. And that one is captained by Zubin. And I believe this team also actually has Eliminate in it.
This is a very, very stacked team. So this team that's chosen to go against them might not be so lucky. But let's find out. We have Team Xbox.
And that one's captained by Netro. So pretty decent matchup overall. It really just depends on what team compositions are going to make up those rosters. But that just leaves 2 more teams for the sake of drawing them. We'll go ahead and choose who's going to be on red side versus blue side. And our red team is going to be team number 4. And that is captained by GS Astra.
That leaves us with our final team.
Boy, I wonder who that's going to be.
I don't know. Beyond me. But it is 7 in the morning with the captain of that team being a lot.
Oh boy. So that will do it. That's going to be your 6 matches. So please coordinate with the team captain that you're going to be going up against as soon as possible. As always, we'll provide a deadline for the match times to be decided. And I feel like it's worth going over once again what the round info is going to be. So reminder, matches will be 3v3. I know the original announcement during the last showcase was going to be 4v4, but it was amended to be 3v3. So if you do have somebody that can't show up, basically it's not the end of the world, but please try and have everybody there because we want to give everybody a chance to show off what they're made of. And this is going to be a match to be first to 4 in a row. If we reach a point where it's no longer theoretically possible for either team to win 4 in a row, then we immediately go into the tiebreaker. So for those of you wondering what the condition is going to be, that's going to be the condition. So as soon as it is impossible for it to become a 4 in a row, then the tiebreaker will be played. So please plan accordingly. Alexa, you got anything else left to add?
not much besides what you've already said. Please coordinate with your teammates and please coordinate with your opponents.
Also, one last point of emphasis, if your team loses, all 4 players are eliminated. We will be moving on to round 4, or to the next round, with only 24 players. So please practice. You don't want to be the one that causes your team to lose. But with that being said, we wish you all the best of luck, and we'll catch you guys later.
Goodbye.